The world of Pokemon is in danger. For like the 18th time this decade. A meteor of unimaginable speeds is hurtling towards the planet. Out of all of the Pokemon in the series, there's very few that could compete with the popularity of Charizard, Pikachu, and even Mewtwo. And among those is Rayquaza. And with good reason, because Rayquaza not only looks awesome, it is a contender for the top 3 strongest Pokemon in the series. And I don't just say that because its Mega destroyed the entire tiering system of competitive Pokemon. Oh yeah, if you didn't know, it did that. So today we're going to be going over all of the absurd things that Rayquaza has done in the series and figuring out how strong is the DragonLord Rayquaza. Rayquaza has a strong and endless desire to do heroic deeds for the Pokemon world. And of course, the most well-known of all of those is subduing the super ancient Pokemon duo of Kyogre and Groudon. These two Pokemon alone can affect the entire world, with Groudon being able to create continents with its footsteps, and Kyogre being able to raise the sea level of the entire planet, effectively flooding the world. Rayquaza itself lives in the upper atmosphere of the planet, where it feasts on meteorites to survive. Or just whatever it can find up there, like the Pokemon Minior. Or just the particles it finds up there. It's not really hard for a Rayquaza to survive, apparently. The thing is millions of years old. I'm not kidding, its Pokedex entry says it's millions of years old. There's a reason this trio is called the Super Ancient Trio. Or Weather Trio. Weather Trio probably sounds better. Speaking of meteors, Rayquaza is responsible for shooting down planet-destroying meteors as a pastime. And Rayquaza even has a special organ in its body where if it eats meteors, it starts to feel its Mega Evolution. See, Rayquaza doesn't Mega Evolve like normal Pokemon. Rayquaza has an organ in its body called the Mikado organ, and it has the same power as a Mega Stone. By consuming meteorites as it flies through the stratosphere, Rayquaza's Mikado organ will be filled up and it'll enable it to Mega Evolve. And while on the topic, Rayquaza's Mega Evolution was born from humanity's wish for salvation. Yeah, apparently Rayquaza is Pokemon Jesus. Anyways, I know what you're here for. You want to know just what ridiculous crap this dragon has done. So let's get into that. As mentioned before, Rayquaza can stop Kyogre and Groudon at the same time, who are both multi-continental to planetary threats at minimum. And this was in its debut generation, Gen 3. For reference, we did not have planetary threats in Pokemon back then. Mewtwo and Lugia were the biggest threats we could come across until the Super Ancient Trio came along. So right off the bat, base Rayquaza should be multi-continental to planetary at minimum, based just off the fact it can solo Kyogre and Groudon. Hell, it's not even soloing them, it's just yelling at them and they're backing off because they know it's gonna screw them up if they don't. But then, we get an even more impressive feat in the same generation, but not the mainline games. Do you know what Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is? It's a game where you're a Pokemon, you make a team, you go out, rescue more Pokemon, and for some reason you have to save the world. Turns out there's a planet-destroying meteor coming. This is backed up by Gardevoir saying that the world faced extinction, and Xatu saying that he feared it, the world's destruction. And Xatu can see the future. He saw the future where the meteor hit. So we have to stop a meteor. And I think you know where we're going with this, don't you? We have to go and get Rayquaza to destroy the meteor for us. Now, in the original Game Boy Advanced release of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, we can't really measure or do anything with the meteor to determine how planet-destroying it is. But luckily, the remake has us covered, which is what you've been seeing in the background. This is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX. For all intents and purposes, it's a retelling of the original Pokemon Red Rescue Team. Though it now has Mega Evolutions, and the ever-popular and great friend areas have been removed and just replaced with pictures, and I will never forgive them for that. Rayquaza has to destroy the planet-destroying meteor, which, get this, spoiler alert, has Deoxys in it. So let's calculate just how planet-destroying the Deoxys meteor from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is. It's very hard to measure the meteor, but luckily there's some mountains in the background that we can use to roughly scale it. The average mountain is 8,000 meters in height, and we can use this to keep stacking one on top of each other to measure the meteor. It's about 6.9 of these mountains, so 6.9 times 8,000 equals 55,200 meters. This will be our diameter for the meteor. And honestly, this could be a lowball because the meteor is farther in the background than those mountains are. But this is our best guesstimate. Just keep in mind it's a potential lowball. So now that we have the diameter of the meteor, we can figure out the radius. And luckily, the radius is just half of the diameter, which would be 27,600 meters. And with this, we can get the mass for the meteor. The formula to determine the mass of a sphere, which we're just going to say this is a sphere because it's the easiest to do, is 4 out of 3 times pi times radius to the power of 3 times density. So what material is the meteor made of? Well, a vast majority of meteors are made of iron, so the safest bet would be to use the density of iron. 7,873 kilograms per meter to the third power. That's the density of iron. Now that we have everything to determine the mass, we just put that into our calculator and we find the Deoxys meteor in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon has a mass worth 693 quadrillion, 355 trillion, 726 billion, 741 million, 605,773.964 kilograms. Needless to say, it's stupidly heavy, but mass can only get us so far. We need to find the speed of the meteor to determine just how planet-destroying it is. Sadly, there is no consistent speed shown for the meteor at all across all of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX. So let's do something creative. Behold an area known as Meteor Cave. This cave was formed when a fragment of the meteor that Rayquaza destroyed hit a mountain. And thanks to the remake showing us just how big the crater this fragment made in the overworld is, we can use this to determine how fast the fragment must have been moving, and then compare it to the actual meteor. But to do this, we have to use a rather complex equation. This is the formula to determine the diameter of a transient crater at level of original ground. And we're going to use this equation to work backwards and determine the speed of the meteor fragment that hit the Earth. But let me explain what each variable is so that you're not confused. DTC is the diameter of the transient crater at level of original ground. It's basically what our final answer would be. PP is projectile density. PT is target density. L is projectile diameter. VI is impact velocity. G is surface gravity. And that weird O with a line through it is the angle of impact from horizontal. So how exactly do we work backwards to determine the impact velocity? Well, lucky for us, we have every single other variable available to us, which means we just have to take the final answer, which we also have, and divide it by every other variable, and what the remainder is should be our impact velocity. So what exactly is every single variable that we have? Let's start with the diameter of the crater. Because Meteor Cave's crater is the diameter of an entire mountain, we can say that the crater it left is the same as the average mountain's width, which is 30 kilometers. We also know that high-speed meteors leave craters 20 times the size of the meteor that caused them. So 30,000 meters divided by 20 equals 1,500 meters, which should be the diameter of the meteor fragment that caused the crater. For the projectile density, we know that it's iron, as I mentioned before. But the calculator I'm using just rounds the density of iron up to 8,000 kilograms per meter to the power of 3. So keep that in mind if you're trying to check my math. I'll also include the calculator in the description. For target density, we just use the density of the Earth itself, which is 5,500 kilograms per meter to the power of 3. For projectile diameter, we just figured that out a few seconds ago. 1,500 meters. We can skip over impact velocity for now because that's what we're actually trying to figure out. Surface gravity is the gravity of Earth, which would be 9.8 meters per second squared. And then finally, the angle of impact from the horizontal plane. Luckily for this, we can just use a protractor and throw it on the screen, and we can figure out that the meteor was going to hit the planet from 70 degrees. So now that we have all the variables, we just have to multiply them by their exponents shown in the formula. Then we'll take those numbers and divide them by our final result, and what remains should be our impact velocity. So what's on screen now should be what the numbers would be if we brought them to the exponents that are shown in the formula. Now we just divide 30,000 by these numbers. So if we do that, we get 320.88 kilometers per second. However, this still is not our final answer. Remember the variables that were in the equation before? We now have to figure out how to turn 320.88 back to the original number that should have been before we added the exponent in the equation. Or multiplied it by the exponents. I don't know the terminology, whatever. Let's just do the thing. To return 320.88 to the original number it was supposed to be, we just raise it to the exponent of 1 divided by 0.44. This will finally give us our impact velocity, which is 496.85 kilometers per second. And now, at long last, we have everything we need to figure out how much kinetic energy the Deoxys meteor in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon would have had if it hit the planet. The formula to determine kinetic energy is 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. For fun, let's figure out what the mass of the fragment would be and see just how destructive it should be. Using the equation to determine the mass of the sphere like we did before, we find that the fragment has a mass of 13,912,739,420,000 kilograms. Putting our mass and velocity into the kinetic energy equation, we get 1 septillion, 717 sextillion, 244 quintillion, 21 quadrillion, 882 trillion, 900 billion joules of energy. That would be the equivalent of 410 petatons of TNT and be capable of destroying multiple continents. And remember, this is just the fragment. Now let's do the actual entire meteor. Let's assume that it has the same velocity as the fragment, even though it probably has more, but this is the best we got for the velocity. 496.85 kilometers per second. And as stated before, the entire meteor should have a mass of 693 quadrillion, 355 trillion, 726 billion, 741 million, 605,773.964 kilograms. Putting these into the kinetic energy equation, we get 85 octillion, 580 septillion, 870 sextillion, 484 quintillion, 182 quadrillion joules of energy, which would be the equivalent of 20 exatons of TNT and be capable of destroying multiple continents. So by our own math, the Deoxys meteor is not exactly planetary, but then again, the velocity could be much slower than the meteor actually was for the reasons I gave before. All that being said, do you realize how life-ending this meteor is? For a comparison, the Chicxulub meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs only had 100 teratons of TNT to it. Deoxys' meteor would be 200,000 times more destructive than the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. It would literally leave a crater the size of Texas. But life survived that meteor, it should be fine. Wrong. If this meteor hit the planet, it would cause a magnitude 11 earthquake everywhere on the planet. Debris from the impact site will be catapulted into space and orbit around the Earth, coming back down as smaller meteors, heating up the entire atmosphere of the planet. As the Earth rotates, more and more debris will keep falling everywhere on the planet, igniting forest fires all around the entire planet. The amount of debris added to the atmosphere, along with the smoke from the forest fires, will block out the sun for decades. A mountain of superheated magma will form at the impact site, pushing away the nearby oceans, causing a tsunami that will spread in every direction for hundreds of miles. The impact from the meteor will also be so great that it will cause world-spread volcanic eruptions. The plume of smoke from the impact site will finally reach the atmosphere of the Earth and spread around the entire planet, further cutting off sunlight for decades to come, and because there's no sunlight, the lowest form of the food chain, plankton, will die in the ocean, and plants will die on the surface for the same reason, further killing off the food chain. And remember all of the debris that's falling back down to Earth? Well, when things fall from the atmosphere, they get very, very hot. All of these stupidly hot things falling down to the planet will heat up the atmosphere. How hot it'll get, we don't actually know, but there's two theories. This makes the heat of the atmosphere reach hundreds of degrees Celsius for a few minutes, or thousands of degrees Celsius for 1 minute. Oh wait, did you think I was describing what would happen if the Deoxys meteor hit the planet? No, this is what the dinosaurs went through. The Deoxys meteor would be 200,000 times worse and be capable of wiping out all life 5 times over. The planet would be so stupidly hot, it would incinerate life on the microbial level. And Rayquaza destroys this in seconds. Only takes him like 3 seconds in the original game. So now we know how strong this thing was in its debut generation, but of course we're just barely halfway done. But really, how much more insane could Rayquaza be? I'll kill you! Alright, let's go over the manga first because it never gets enough attention. In the Pokemon Adventures ORAS manga, the Deoxys meteor has returned once again. being now called the Grand Meteor Delta. In the story, various sides are trying to stop the world-destroying meteor, and this time we actually have proof that it's world-destroying. We're actually straight up shown what'll happen if this meteor should hit the planet. Nothing will be left. The Earth will be completely obliterated, just small rocks floating around in space. And so, what plans do the various sides devise to try and avert this catastrophe? Much like in the games, Devon Corp just wants to open an alternate reality portal to throw the meteor through. Xenia, just like in the games, wants to stop that and wants to use Rayquaza to destroy the meteor. But then we have the genius ideas of Archie and Maxie from Team Aqua and Magma. They're going to use Primal Groudon and Kyogre to try and halt the meteor. And it's implied that the duo could do this, though, in the story, meaning that Primal Kyogre and Groudon would scale to the meteor. And don't worry, I'm about to go into the math of how stupidly powerful this meteor would be. But in the manga, this would mean that Primal Kyogre and Groudon are absolutely planetary. You know, because the meteor is going to obliterate the planet. But then again, Maxie and Archie aren't exactly the smartest people ever, because Maxie here thought it was a great idea to use Precipice Blades on Rayquaza. Also, Rayquaza is just the GOAT in this manga because he tried to kill Xenia. And nobody likes Xenia. So after the attempted child murder, or maybe she's an adult, I don't know, the manga's weird with the ages, our heroes and Rayquaza go into space and destroy the Grand Meteor Delta. But of course Deoxys is in it, and he starts piling up every single meteor fragment and throws them towards the planet. So Rayquaza goes and does what he's best at and kills Deoxys. Oh, he actually killed him. So I know you're all wondering how powerful this meteor is. But unfortunately, we can't figure it out only using the manga. And that's because the manga never tells us how big this meteor actually is. But it does tell us how fast it is. Well, not exactly, but it does give us everything we need to figure out how fast it is. Thanks to someone already figuring this out on Versus Wiki, we know in the story that the meteor has 10 days until impact. And both in the manga and in the game, the meteor is being tracked from the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. So we just need to determine how many seconds are in 10 days, which is easy. 10 days times 24 hours times 3,600 seconds equals 864,000 seconds in 10 days. This is how long the meteor has until it impacts Earth. And as mentioned before, the meteor is being tracked from the edge of the Milky Way galaxy via those screens we see in the manga and in the game. Which means we now just need to figure out the distance between the edge of the Milky Way and Earth. And that distance is 270,000 light years. This means that in the time frame of 10 days, the meteor must travel 255 quintillion, 439 quadrillion, 7 trillion meters. So to accomplish this, the meteor must be moving at a speed of 295 trillion, 647 billion, 801 million meters per second. Which would mean that the meteor is moving 986,174.91 times the speed of light. Just from that, you can probably tell that the Grand Meteor Delta isn't exactly planetary, but something way above that. So now to figure out the mass of the meteor, we are going to have to go to the actual games. And the meteor is once again called a planetary threat. And I can already hear some of you typing, but if the meteor is light speed, we don't even need to figure out its mass because its mass would be infinite. And to that I say yes, in real life. But this is fiction, and they really do not care if something is light speed, they're still giving it mass. It's not obliterating everything by moving for some stupid reason. Plus, it's not very much fun just to do the equation and end up with an answer of infinity because light speed objects have to have infinite mass. Luckily though, this isn't real life. So shut up and let me do my math. In the games, we're told that the meteor has a diameter of 6 miles, which gives us everything we need to determine its mass. Just like the previous meteor, we're going to assume that it's made of iron because a vast majority of meteors are. 6 miles would mean that the meteor has a diameter of 9.66 kilometers. So now we just put that into our equation for the mass of a sphere. And we find that the Grand Meteor Delta has a mass worth 3,715,953,348,010,000 kilograms. Oh yeah, from this point in the video, someone's smoke alarm is going to probably be beeping in the background, so sorry for that. And remember, those screens that showed the meteor was at the edge of the Milky Way are in both the manga and the video game. Which means the massively faster than light speed we calculated for the meteor would apply to the game as well. But it could be even faster, because in the game we're not told exactly how many days are left before the meteor hits, just that it's mere days from hitting the planet. which could potentially mean that the meteor is less than a week from hitting the planet. But to be safe, let's go with the speed we calculated from the 10 days given from the manga. So now that we have our mass and speed calculated, the kinetic energy of the Grand Meteor Delta in Pokemon Oras is 162 tridecillion, 401 dodecillion, 176 undecillion, 924 decillion, 180 nonillion joules of energy. This would be the equivalent of 1.624 foe. This would be enough energy to not only obliterate the planet Earth, but also obliterate a large star, larger than our own sun. That's right, Rayquaza just flew straight through a meteor that could destroy a star with his face. A meteor that was massively faster than light. And then he went on to fight the thing that was driving it. And that's about all I got for Rayquaza. What do you mean there's more? How could he possibly get any stronger than...
Noah, give it back.
No.
Noah, give it back.
No.
I said give it back now. Noah!
Larry, what the hell are you doing?
Larry!
Larry, you can't just... Oh,
Larry! Oh, are you all right? How did...
Larry! Righto, what's going on here?
Oh, sir, I'm arrested. Oh.
Coming soon to Foxtown. Ow! What the?
Oh boy, remember all the math we just did? Get ready to throw it out the window. In the Pokemon movie Hoopa Unbound, Hoopa summons 6 legendary Pokemon to help it try and kill Hoopa. The real Hoopa. There's 2 Hoopas. Technically only 1, but whatever. Anyways, the good Hoopa, the small one, summons Rayquaza and the Lottie twins to help it survive. And Rayquaza is carrying the entire team in this movie. So let me try and break down each Pokemon Rayquaza has to take on in this movie. There's Primal Kyogre and Groudon, but we already know that Rayquaza can easily solo those 2 because of the lore in the series. So really, they're just here for being here. But then we have a Kyurem that can switch between both of its forms. So let me give you a quick overview of how powerful Kyurem should be. Kyurem itself is stronger than both Reshiram and Zekrom, its other halves from when it was the original dragon. Both of these Pokemon have been said to be able to burn the entire planet. This would mean that Kyurem, especially in its alternate forms, should be able to match what the other members of the Tau Trio can do. Meaning that Kyurem is very well possibly a planet buster. Not to mention that due to Kyurem's dual Ice Dragon typing, it should have a 6-time advantage against Rayquaza. And yet the DragonLord sent it running. Literally running. Then we have the most infamous of Hoopa's choices, the Creation Trio. Quite literally the gods of the Pokemon world. And how strong these Pokemon are can vary depending on who you're talking to. The cosmology of Pokemon itself can be confusing and vary depending on the sources that you use, but basically the base universe is infinite due to Palkia creating an infinite universe upon its birth, and Palkia and Dialga exist in higher dimensions as we know because you have to transcend to even talk to them from the Arceus movie. Then we have the Distortion World that is also a higher dimension that Giratina resides in and also is. If the Distortion World is higher than Palkia and Dialga's dimension, we don't really know. But I'm not going to be surprised if it is. The confusing parts come from Palkia and Dialga's lore and how you interpret them. One interpretation is that Palkia created infinite spatial dimensions and governs them. Another could be that Palkia is above the idea of a higher dimension versus a lower dimension. And depending on which of those is your interpretation of the lore, it could very drastically skew how powerful the Creation Trio is. I tried my best to scale it in another video of mine, but apparently it has some flaws with it. But regardless of how you look at it, the bare minimum that the Creation Trio should scale to is multiversal. This is because Palkia and Dialga in the anime can affect the multiverse, and there is a canon multiverse in every single iteration of Pokemon media. So why is this so important? Because out of the Creation Trio, Giratina is horrifically stronger than Palkia and Dialga. Its presence alone was enough to make these two back down when they were mind-controlled in Pokemon Platinum. And Giratina is even capable of breaking not one, but 2 red chains, an item used to control Palkia and Dialga. The red chain was made by Arceus to control them. And Giratina in its altered form, not even its origin form, is more than capable of fighting both at the same time. Granted, yes, these are not their origin forms and thus not their full power, but just altered form Palkia and Dialga was enough to threaten the multiverse in the anime, meaning that just their altered forms are multiverse in scale. Again though, why do I bring this up? Because Mega Rayquaza one-shots Giratina, and then styles on him by dodging a move that cannot miss. This would mean Rayquaza scales to Giratina now. Kyurem does not even compare to what Rayquaza is at this point. But I know a few of you who actually watched the movie will have an argument against this. Hoopa was just controlling those Pokemon, thus they can't use their full power. Plus, they aren't destroying the universe, are they? And to that I say, these Pokemon were bloodlusted and controlled by Hoopa Unbound. Palkia and Dialga were firing off spatial rends and roars of time like crazy. Attacks that seen elsewhere in the anime were going to destroy the multiverse. And Rayquaza could not only match a combination of these attacks in its base form, he also could match Giratina, who is a natural counter to these 2 gods. There is no reason for Hoopa to be limiting their power, especially when their presence could create a space-time rift that none of the creation trio could fix. Not to mention that Hoopa Unbound is so powerful it took 3 Arceus plates just to bind him. Yes, Arceus plates, the things that were the vestiges of creating the universe left by Arceus, the things that can change Arceus's type. It took 3 of those to bind him. If you really want to say he's using weaker versions of these legendaries because he's not using a red chain, okay. But he's still having them use attacks that destroy/distort time and space. And Rayquaza can match them. Not to mention that the Arceus plates in the anime aren't like in the games. There's not multiple of them. There's only 17. And remember, this is the lowest scale for the creation trio. The highest seems to be Outer Versal. And Rayquaza was scaling to their strongest member. Need more evidence that Rayquaza can contend with the trio? At the end of the movie, Rayquaza uses Twister, the weakest Dragon-type move in the game, reinforced by the Lottie Twins' Psychic, and this Twister is able to take a combined attack from all 7 legendary Pokemon. And on their first attempt to break the Twister, Palkia and Dialga use Spatial Rend and Roar of Time, meaning that they are absolutely giving this attack everything that they have. It takes Hoopa Unbound himself targeting Rayquaza to even break the Twister. And Rayquaza even tanked that hit. And this is just how strong Rayquaza is. We haven't even gone over his speed or hacks or everything else. Let's start with the speed in Oras. In the cutscene where Rayquaza travels to space to destroy the Grand Meteor Delta, it takes him 58 seconds to fly from the top of Sky Pillar to low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit can be anywhere between 160 kilometers in the sky to 2,000 kilometers, or 99 miles to 1,243 miles in the air. To travel 2,000 kilometers in 58 seconds, Rayquaza would have to be moving at a speed of 34.4828 kilometers per second, or 34,482.8 meters per second. That would be just a little over Mach 100. And here's a little YouTube video to show just how fast Mach 100 would look to a human. Needless to say, Rayquaza's travel speed is ridiculously fast, and it's probably holding itself back just to not kill the human that is riding it. Oh, but wait, this isn't even a fraction of how fast Rayquaza actually is. In Pokemon Generations, it only takes Rayquaza 3 seconds to reach low Earth orbit after it passes the highest clouds in the sky. The highest clouds are around 14 kilometers in the air. This would mean that Rayquaza traveled 1,986 kilometers in 3 seconds. To do this, Rayquaza must have been moving at a speed of 662,000 meters per second, or Mach 1,930. And remember, this is just Rayquaza's travel speed when it has a human on its head. Being able to fight with Deoxys, who also piloted the same Grand Meteor Delta that is massively faster than light, should mean that Rayquaza also scales to its speed, which should be the same speed we calculated for the meteor. And I think you know where we're going next with this, don't you? Being able to take on Giratina, Rayquaza should also scale to the Creation Trio's speed. Which, oh boy, it gets complex again. Going by this chart's explanations, Giratina, who is exempt from the rules of time, would likely have inaccessible or immeasurable speed. And via scaling to him, Rayquaza would also have these speeds, not to mention that it dodged an attack from Giratina that is guaranteed to hit. Okay, look, Rayquaza is vaguely, roughly average intelligence, maybe above average. Rayquaza's never demonstrated anything of superb intelligence and mainly is an instinctual/territorial Pokemon. It is smart enough to put aside disputes to fight a greater threat just like it does in Mystery Dungeon and the manga. In the manga, he even stops fighting Groudon and Kyogre so they can destroy meteor fragments together. Believe it or not, Rayquaza is even capable of reading. It's ancient Pokemon language, but he can still read it. By the way, this is basically an ancient TM to teach him Dragon Ascent. Half the thing is basically a fan letter praising him. All of that being said, Rayquaza is still an extremely territorial Pokemon like most legendaries are. So much so that unless there's a bigger threat present, Rayquaza will let that territorial nature blind him. Even so, if humanity should need Rayquaza, it will come to their aid and answer their wishes. Rayquaza also makes bonds with the current lore keeper. In the manga, it was Aster, Zinnia's predecessor. And Rayquaza's friend's death deeply affected the Pokemon despite how ancient he is. So much so that Aster's ghost could actually distract Rayquaza for a moment while Zinnia was trying to get to him. But Rayquaza still makes its own decisions because we know how that ended for Zinnia. Loser. Durability-wise, Rayquaza is capable of literally face-tanking large star-level meteors and then fighting Deoxys, who should also be large star-level because he was driving the thing. And that's the bare minimum, because Rayquaza was also able to tank an attack from Hoopa Unbound. And I've been holding off the entire video to mention this, but this entire fight with these 6 legendary Pokemon, Rayquaza nerfed itself at the start. Yes, at the start of the fight, Rayquaza used Dragon Ascent against Giratina, an attack that lowers the user's defenses. So this entire fight against these 6 legendary Pokemon, Rayquaza has had its durability nerfed. And it still manages to tank a hit from Hoopa Unbound. It takes taking a hit from Hoopa, who can command all 6 of these legendary Pokemon, including the Creation Trio, and then a combined attack of Palkia, Giratina, and Kyurem White to finally take Rayquaza out of the fight. And Rayquaza only got hit because it was trying to protect Ash. He could have easily gone after each Pokemon again. So all things considered, Rayquaza's durability should be comparable to the Creation Trios as well. Would you believe Rayquaza has some really weird hacks? Of course, it has the really specific hack of draining Primal Kyogre and Groudon's primal abilities, but it also has the ability Airlock, which negates all weather and allows Rayquaza to have full control over the weather. Then there's its Mega Form's ability Delta Stream, which not only negates weather, but also nullifies the flying type's weaknesses. Meaning that in terms of weaknesses, Rayquaza is treated as a pure dragon type. But there's some extremely weird hacks that the manga gives Rayquaza. Like, did you know all dragon type Pokemon create vapor trails when they fly, and if those vapor trails intersect with one another, they create platforms that other Pokemon could stand on? Do you think Rayquaza could make a cage out of that and trap someone in it? And then we have the fact that Rayquaza emits poisonous ozone when it's in space. Because if dragging your opponent to space isn't enough to kill it, Rayquaza can just wrap itself around you and poison you to death now. And oh my god, we've finally reached the end of how strong Rayquaza is. Oh wait, no we didn't. I still have to go over the moves it can use. Rayquaza has various moves it can use to enhance its stats like Dragon Dance, which will boost its already absurd speed and attack. Rayquaza is capable of calling down meteors with the attack Draco Meteor. Rayquaza is capable of changing the weather with various attacks like Sunny Day, Rain Dance, whatever else. Rayquaza can shoot beams of ice with Ice Beam. Rayquaza can also use electrical attacks with attacks like Thunderbolt and Thunder. Rayquaza can shoot high-powered shockwaves out of its mouth with Dragon Pulse. And he can learn the ridiculously powerful attacks of Dragon Ascent and V-Create. The latter being the strongest fire-type move ever. So let's summarize everything we've gone over. In terms of strength, Rayquaza's base is at minimum multi-continental to planetary. In the Hoopa movie, his base form is capable of stopping Roar of Time and Spatial Rends sent by Palkia and Dialga, so it's possible that his base form could scale to them. In his Mega form, Rayquaza should be anywhere between planetary to large star level based on his feats in the manga and ORAS game. Taking Rayquaza's feats from the Hoopa movie, he could scale anywhere between multiversal to outerversal, depending on how you scale the creation trio. In terms of speed, we didn't really go over base Rayquaza's speed, but he should be hypersonic at minimum. Extreme speed already allows it to move faster than the eye can see. Mega Rayquaza is a completely different story though. At bare minimum, Rayquaza should be capable of moving at Mach 100 speeds, with the maximum travel speed we calculated being around Mach 1200. And its combat speed should be even more ridiculous. Due to fighting Deoxys, who was controlling the Grand Meteor Delta, which was moving at massively faster than light plus speeds, and thus should scale to them, Rayquaza should also be capable of fighting at massively faster than light speeds. Add on to the fact that Rayquaza can speed blitz Giratina, who is without the concept of time, Rayquaza likely has inaccessible to immeasurable speed. In regards to durability, Rayquaza was capable of literally face-tanking a large star-level meteor. Then from the Hoopa Unbound movie, Rayquaza was capable of tanking a hit from Hoopa Unbound, and then 4 other legendaries, which included Palkia. All of this was after Rayquaza actively nerfed its own defenses, which would mean that Mega Rayquaza has multiversal to outerversal durability. When it comes to experience, Rayquaza is literally millions of years old. It's not known how many times it's fought during its life, but it has taken on Groudon and Kyogre multiple times. It's also constantly protecting the planet from meteor strikes. And then Rayquaza has also taken on the creators of the multiverse. For hacks, Rayquaza has some weird ones. First off, it has full control of the weather via airlock. This also extends to its Mega Form's ability, Delta Stream, but Delta Stream also has the added benefit of nullifying flying types' weaknesses. Rayquaza, as well as all dragon types, are capable of producing a vapor trail as they fly. If these vapor trails intersect with each other, they create a platform at the point of intersection. Rayquaza is capable of producing a poisonous ozone, though it only seems to do this while it's in space. Oh wait, one more thing. Do you like discussing which of your favorite characters can win in a fight? Like, what would happen if Rayquaza fought DragonLord Placidusax? He would absolutely destroy him, there is no contest. But if you want to argue in favor of the opposite side, check out the Discord community that I lurk around in because I have no life. There you can interact in discussions about how strong a certain character is, if a certain character could beat another character, and do calcs and do whatever else. You may even see something I'm working on before it hits YouTube. We also have this sweet Neo Metal giving a thumbs up emoji. It's currently broken at the moment. So if any of that piques your interest, check out the link in the description to the Discord. Also follow the rules or else. Goodbye.